Hello and welcome back to Cast Iron, a podcast all about heavy metal. I am Alan Williamson and I'm joining you from the land down under. Hey!
Hey!
And I'm joined by Lewis Clark. Lewis, how's it going on the other side of the world?
Not too bad, fella, not too bad. I've had a week off because it's half term over here and I work in a school now, so I get those off. So yeah, it's been nice and chill. Been quite catching up with friends, been doing some bits and pieces on my own. Went to see Thor yesterday. It was good fun. So yeah.
Oh, is this the Ragnarok?
That's the one. Yeah. Good film. Really fun.
I was listening to our Bellacore episode yesterday.
Okay.
And what I liked was you going, this is the second in a two-part podcast. And I was like,
Yeah. Fair few months between the two of those. So I do apologise for that, guys. But yeah, it's just one of those things, isn't it? Sometimes I just my career gets up with me a little bit, and I haven't got the time as much to edit.
There were several mitigating circumstances with the last episode.
Yeah.
I was packing up my stuff and moving halfway around the world.
That's
and
the
I've
thing,
now
isn't it?
done that.
Yep.
And I'm now halfway around the world. So obviously that was a big change.
Yep.
And Australia is very warm. I think it's the warmest I've ever been. It was about 35 degrees a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And whenever I lived in Oxford, I used to just cycle and get public transport everywhere.
Yep.
But now we're driving Jess's car, which is a 1991 Toyota Corolla.
Okay.
It does have air conditioning, but she has assured me that if you turn it on, the car will struggle and start to cry. So what you have to do on a 35-degree day is you move from the train station to the car, you get in, and you hope that you get moving fast enough that the air will get sucked through the car and cool you down. But it is
just hang your head out the window. Just do the dog thing.
Well, we're coming back to the UK at Christmas for my brother, the brother who recorded our theme tune.
Yep.
It's his wedding just before Christmas, so we're going from what'll be 35-40 degree days to about 5 degree days.
Yeah. So you're going to catch colds very quickly. Basically, is what's going to happen there.
Yeah, well, I won't be used to all the British diseases, and then I'll come back to Australia and I'll get all the Australian diseases.
There you go. Oh God!
But it's been we've had a really good few months.
Excellent.
I've managed to get this is me. Like obviously you know all this. I'm just filling in the listeners.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah.
I'm on a working holiday visa, but we've just applied for a partner visa, and my intention is to settle here long term.
Yep.
We've seen some good bands. We saw Haken a couple of weeks ago.
I've seen that you've
Sydney.
been to plenty of gigs. Yeah. You've been to more gigs than I have.
Yeah. Well, it's I guess. Whenever bands come out here, you really want to support them because like Haken are a British band, but I've never seen them in Britain.
Yep.
And we've seen Haken. Who else did we see? The Smith Street Band, Luca Brasi, who are an interesting Tasmanian rock band.
Yep.
So we've seen quite a few acts, and we're going to Prog Fest in January.
Oh wow!
And the headliners are Lepras.
Wow. Okay.
So that'll be the second time I've seen them.
Yeah.
And they'll be absolutely phenomenal if they're anything like last time I saw them.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also going to see Neobla Viscaris next February.
Yep.
So their new album came out yesterday.
Oh, cool. Right.
And I've listened to about half of it, and I was in work. I was like, I don't know, mailing envelopes at the time, and I was like, this is a good first half.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't listened to the whole thing yet. So the music scene in Sydney is interesting because I've said before about a couple of Aussie bands, Bellacore, Neo are two of them, and they tend to be based out of Melbourne, and Melbourne is more of that scene. But because Australia is such a big country and it's so far away, whenever bands tour here, they tend to play Perth and Adelaide and Sydney and Melbourne. As long as you're in one of those big urban centres, and possibly Brisbane as well, as long as you're in one of those big urban centres, you've got a good chance to see a lot of bands. The other one we just booked the other day was Incubus are playing next year. I know you're not a massive fan of, but I've never seen them live, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Oh, I mean, you've got to make use of what you can, so that's the thing, isn't it? Like,
you gotta take your hits where you can get them.
That's it.
But So things are going well in the music scene, and things are going good on the live scene. So it's been a good change so far. The visa paperwork's been pretty stressful. I had to list all of my places I've lived in the past 10 years,
Oh, right,
places
okay.
I've visited,
Yeah,
countries
bloody hell.
outside the UK. I was like, geez, I don't know if I can remember all this. And then
Yeah,
there's weird ones like we went skiing last January. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
do you right Switzerland? Because that's where we landed.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
right France? That's where we were. So yeah, if you come here, do it through citizenship or holiday because the visa paperwork's a nightmare.
Fair enough.
But
There you
that
go.
is- but that
Man
is
speaking
not
from
the-
experience. So, yeah.
Yeah. But if anybody has any partner visa questions, don't contact me. I don't want to hear about it.
Enough of that.
But anyway, we're not here to talk about my visa woes.
Mm.
We're here to talk about today's album, which is a new avenue for us, perhaps.
Yeah.
And that album is Linkin Park's Meteora. So new metal then.
Yeah. So, well, I want to say that this is the first time we've really spoken about new metal on the podcast, but it would have been the second time if we didn't lose that baby metal episode that we did. So-
Well, okay, because I also thought this is the second time. But
Okay.
What I was thinking of when we covered Iowa.
That's a fair point, yeah. But I feel like Iowa... It's interesting that you talk about that, actually, because that sort of links into my first experience with Linkin Park in a weird way. So when I first heard Linkin Park, I had a friend in high school who used to sort of rip and burn me CDs, which, obviously don't do, lads. It's quite illegal.
We all had a friend like that. We all had a friend.
And one of the first ones he gave me was Iowa by Slipknot. And I remember that being a really challenging listen at first because it was like, it's an incredibly dense, heavy record. And yeah, not quite standoffish in a weird way. And then after that, he then gave me Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park. And then it started to sort of click. It was like, okay, this is just pop music, but it's heavier. I can get on with this. It's not, it's not going at 100 miles an hour. It's not as dense,
Yep.
So that was my first introduction to Linkin Park, and I feel like that mirrors an awful lot of people of my generation's experience with Linkin Park. Is that they're sort of their first heavy band, or like a gateway band into heavier things. That definitely feels like a very similar experience with a lot.
I think for me, that definitely would have been. So my first experience of Linkin Park was, I'm quite surprised to remember this actually. It was at my friend James's house, who probably doesn't listen to this. But it was a friend of mine from primary school. We kind of kept in touch even though we went to different high schools. And we were at his house once, and his sister had one of the Now That's What I Call Music albums.
Right, okay.
And it had paper cut in disc 2.
Okay.
Don't know if you've heard much of the Now albums, but basically disc 1 is always the middle of the road beige pop, and disc 2 is the more weird stuff.
Okay.
So it had a bit of like Linkin Park and probably Limp Bizkit and Papa Roach and that kind of stuff.
Right.
I think probably the first rock album that I got burned off a friend was probably Papa Roach's Incest.
Yeah, Infest.
Not Incest. Infest. That's a different album.
Freudian slip there, buddy. God. Amazing.
That's bad. I do quite like Infest. So it was Infest, and it was also Limp Bizkit's Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavoured water, which we're not going to talk about because it's embarrassing. But I saw Linkin Park, one of the first bands I ever saw live, because I saw Metallica in 2003.
Okay.
And they were supported by Linkin Park and The Darkness.
Right, okay, wow. Bloody hell.
And The Darkness are still touring. Daniel went to see them the other week.
I love The Darkness. I want to say guilty pleasure, but I just love The Darkness, so they're not really.
No, I don't think there's anything guilty about liking The Darkness.
Yeah. They're just good fun.
But definitely Linkin Park is going to be a gateway band for a lot of people of our generation. Having spoken to Jess, very much so. This album, very much so. But we should talk a bit about what new metal is, because it's quite a controversial, elitist, slightly snobby thing.
And that sort of it's bizarre because that sort of mirrors people's opinions of Linkin Park, I think, as well. Actually,
definitely.
Yeah. So new metal. Then I feel like new metal starts with Korn. and it's basically sort of like a marriage of down-tuned heavy guitars and hip-hop and funk. Now, the funk side of things is kind of lost as the genre sort of evolves. If you listen to a Linkin Park album, in particular, there is no sort of semblance on that. It's more the hip-hop side that you get interspersed with the heavy music.
Because it's coming off bands like, I guess, Faith No More, Primus, Mr. Bungle, that kind of stuff. That's where the funk aspect comes from.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was in the gym yesterday, running to this, which is the test of every metal album, and I was hammering into my phone some notes about what new metal was like, and I did it before I went on to Wikipedia, and I had written simple, polished, rap and decks, electronic, vaguely emo lyrics, no solos. I think that's not a bad way of coming at it.
No, not at all.
It's much more simple than what you associate with heavy metal. There are pretty much no guitar solos. You might get a catchy riff, but it tends to be quite a lot of power chords, down tuned, as you've said.
Yep.
It tends to have pretty slick production rather than something a bit, like this kind of classic thrashy stuff, or something like the Strapping Young Lad album we covered. Is a much messier production compared to something like Linkin Park. Very, very much a hip hop influence. There's rapping in that. There's usually somebody spinning decks, which is weird because that's generally like a transitional thing for a DJ. It's not just an instrument. But there's often electronic elements like beats and kind of those strange effects. And the lyrics do tend to be there's a lot of metal stuff, stereotypically it's like Satan and death and stuff like that, and or in the case of Megadeth, canned hunts and alien conspiracies. But with new metal, we have to do Megadeth sometime. With new metal, it tends to be quite introspective. It's all about feelings and your mom and your dad hate you, and I think that's probably part of why people could identify with it. Now, we'll talk more about it, but I think Meteora is a very honest portrayal of that. In a way that other bands like Papa Roach and Infest, not Incest, probably aren't. And or something like Limp Bizkit, which is just misogynist nonsense, is what springs to mind. But
there you go.
So, but that to me encapsulates what it's like, and because it is a more simple, mainstream kind of thing, I think that's firstly why people didn't like it in the first place, especially established metal musicians, but also I think that's why it's ran out of steam, because there wasn't really anywhere to take it.
No, absolutely. It's quite a limiting genre to find yourself in. Like you say, you basically encapsulated it in a few words there, and that doesn't really bode well for someone who wanted to build a career on it. Which is why I think Linkin Park kind of moved away from it after this record in particular.
Absolutely, because I think this. So Meteora is their first album was Hybrid Theory.
Yep, which came out in 2000, I think.
October
around that time.
Yep. Yeah, and it's probably one of the biggest selling debut albums of all time.
Yeah, 30 million sold.
So it was a massive album, and Meteora is very much Hybrid Theory Part 2.
It is.
It's a continuation of that sound, and they never really returned to it. And I think the reason why they don't is because they had basically exhausted what they could do in those two albums without repeating themselves over and over. And they're not the only band who was very new metal that changed this. Like Limp Bizkit faded into obscurity. Papa Roach became more of a mainstream rock band. Korn doing a similar kind of thing.
Korn always stood out as their own thing, I think, because if Korn sounded like anybody else, it would be weird, and when Korn have experimented, I think that's where they've really sort of lost their way. Korn sounding like Korn is what you want, basically, because they're so unique. There's nobody else that sounds like Korn. And when people like Cold Chamber, for instance, very much were quite influenced by Korn to the point that they kind of just sound like a clone, which is not something you want to come across as, I think, in any sort of sort of musical endeavor. You've really got to strive to sound unique.
But I think where the snobbery bit comes in, and I think artistically, you could definitely say it's not as interesting as other genres of other subgenres of metal. I think that's okay, and I think I wouldn't necessarily call bands like Slipknot new metal. And I think what happened is that all of these new metal bands, as in NEW metal bands, all get wrapped up into this new metal brush. And so here are some bands that Wikipedia lists under new metal.
Okay, go for it.
So we got. I'll put these in order of you won't mind too much to you'll be shocked and offended. So we've got stuff like Mudvayne, I'd probably consider more groovy.
Yep.
Fear Factory.
No.
Incubus.
Maybe
One,
on
maybe,
occasion.
maybe Science.
Yeah,
maybe Science, but not all. Rammstein.
No.
Okay, here's where it gets really weird. A Perfect Circle.
Right, so I've never listened to A Perfect Circle. I've always assumed there's some sort of weird goth metal band.
No, they're a bit like Tool. It's
oh, okay, so it's progressive metal then. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. Carnival.
No.
Or, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And here's the best one. Duran Grey.
Oh, fuck off.
I was hoping you'd have that reaction.
Oh, Jesus.
So I think any band that became vaguely popular in this space just gets lumped into this new metal category, and that's where part of the confusion arises.
So I remember
new metal was a movement at the time, limited to a few bands, and like Slipknot, I wouldn't say are a new metal band.
No,
not really. They're much more extreme. They're not that mainstream simplified sound. Okay, there's a bit of rap-esque delivery and a bit of electronic stuff, but not in the same way.
No, not at all. And you're very you've hit the nail on the head there, because I do remember it. There's another band in particular that I used to love when I was first getting into heavy music, was Earth Tone 9, who are another sort of progressive metal band, but because of where they were and when they were releasing records, they got lumped in with the new metal scene quite a lot as well, which is a shame, because I don't think that does them any service at all. But strange old period, this one, isn't it? It's very much a genre of its time. I don't think it really sort of lasted any beyond sort of 2005. Really, it's very an early 2000s, late 90s sort of era of music in the heavy vein.
It's a good gateway drug, though.
It is a good gateway drug, and I feel like we've already mentioned, Linkin Park are very much that band for an awful lot of people of our generation. A band that maybe their music isn't particularly progressive. It's very, like you say, it's quite simplistic. It's very much following that pop song structure, but it's just there's a bit more weight to it, a bit more heft. It is heavy music regardless. And these first,
I think it's safe to say new metal is like heavy pop music. The pop side of metal.
Absolutely, and and their first two albums definitely sort of encapsulate their heaviest moments. So the reason why we've picked Meteora instead of Hybrid Theory is, I think it's, despite the fact that it is a very large selling album, I think this one's got 27 million sales as opposed to 30 for Hybrid Theory. Everybody's got an opinion on Hybrid Theory. Like, I'm sure you can put Linkin Park into iTunes podcast and find enough people speaking about Hybrid Theory for the cows, till the cows come home. So we wanted to deal with Meteora because it is essentially the last time that Linkin Park are really a traditional metal band, I suppose. And
when they're at their peak.
Yeah, absolutely. Meteora is almost like a companion piece to Hybrid Theory. It's very much an evolution or an extension of their songwriting on the previous record, and just sort of refines the ideas. And I still think it's probably the stronger record personally, but I'll save final thoughts until we've actually gone through the actual album. So, but so that's sort of the background, I guess, of Linkin Park and where we are at this moment. So Meteora came out in 2003. March 2003, so 3 years, well, just under 3 years off the back of Hybrid Theory, and it very much is, like I say, an extension of that pop metal-y sound that they were, that they championed so early on and basically are known for. So I suppose we should kick things off then, eh?
Yeah, let's get cracking. So we're going to skip forward, which is 13 seconds of instrumental.
Yes,
you said there.
It's so irrelevant you can't scrobble it on Last FM. God.
oh wow. Oh wow.
Songs need to be 30 seconds or longer for that to happen.
All right, we'll go to the first track then. So this is Don't Stay.
Sometimes I need to remember just to breathe. Sometimes I need you to stay away from me. Sometimes I'm in disbelief, I didn't know. Somehow I need you to go. Don't stay. Forget our memories, forget our possibilities.
So Don't Stay, God. So this feels like it should have been a single, and it's not, which is bizarre. Such a rocking opener, awesome riff, and it's just it just encapsulates everything that you want from a Linkin Park song. It's heavy, it's memorable, it's catchy, and one of the things that I totally sort of forget, which I really love about Linkin Park, is they've got these awesome sort of breakdowns where Chester will sort of deliver a certain line, and then it just sort of allows things to get even more down-tuned and a bit metally. So in this one in particular, it's the I don't need you anymore line, and then we just get a lovely, great big chuggy riff.
I don't need you anymore. I don't want to be ignored. I don't need one more day of you wasting me away.
Just what a cracking opening song.
So we could talk about some of the, maybe we should talk about some of the essentials, because then we can talk about, because to be fair, quite a few of these songs do sound similar. Like they've got a cut style. So we've got good chuggy riff. You've got the waka waka wow wow, the decky bits.
So that's Joe Hahn, Scratch DJ,
who apparently disappears in later albums. Not that he leaves the band, they just don't use him.
Well, he's kind of more involved in sort of like adding the electronics or atmospherics to most things now.
But I think what interested me listening back to this was how good Chester Bennington's vocals are, and
so
we talked about new metal as this gateway drug. Whenever you first hear this album, it sounds like he's screaming, but it's not. It's really good, controlled, clean singing.
Yeah. So
and you can tell, because there are times when he does actually scream, and then you think, wow, that's actually pretty good. But it's only whenever you get further into metal you can appreciate what he's doing. Whenever you've absorbed so many different types of vocal styles over the years.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I remember when I first sort of started to get into making my own music, I remember watching sort of like YouTube tutorials and things on how to like scream and stuff, and there was one in particular that sort of half sung, half screamed style. Someone explained it as adding heat to your vocals, and I was like, that's always stuck with me. It's very much a product of things like Soundgarden. Chris Cornell's very good at that.
Also, like it's a very similar sound to Chris Cornell, Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam,
absolutely.
Scott Weiland, Stone Temple Pilots.
Yeah,
it's almost like a kind of classic grungy American delivery.
Yeah, and I think that there's a direct influence there on Linkin Park in that I think that era of grunge music is very important to them. I know in particular that Linkin Park have collaborated with Chris Cornell. I've definitely got a cover of I think it's a Soundgarden song with Chester and Chris Cornell singing. So there's obviously an influence there at least. So yeah,
whenever Chris Cornell died earlier in this year, certainly like I think Chester had definitely commented on his Instagram at the time about how cut up he was about it, and then obviously Chester took his own life a couple of months later.
Yeah, so. Which is another reason why it's taken us a little while to get around to this episode, I think, in that we've wanted to do this for a while, and I remember when, obviously, Chester took his life, I remember you must have said to me either that day or the day after, like, right, I suppose we better do the Linkin Park episode next.
But
yeah, so I absolutely adore this band, and losing Chester was kind of is a bit of a weird one, because again, it's such an important part of like heavy music for me and my generation. I think that having someone like that, go essentially is very, very weird to think about. It still doesn't feel particularly real that he's gone, but so sorry to bring this down a level, but it was just one of those things. It's like, personally, there's a bit of a, there are emotions tied to that man. Yeah, and
I think, like speaking generally about this album, one of the things that people often take the piss out of with new metal is like the lyrics are quite emo, and it's like, it is, I hate you, mom and dad, cutting my wrists, and all this kind of stuff.
It is very dramatic and over emotional. Yes, I understand.
Yeah, but at the same time, this is a guy who dealt with depression for most of his life.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And I think that's why I said Linkin Park have a certain authenticity to this. Now it's not a subtle way of describing it, And
No.
But it's interesting that whenever you've got a pretty storied history of them releasing albums because it's a dark album. It's lyrically very dark.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of topics like the depression and angst and that kind of stuff. And but it's like while it was tragic when he took his own life, it's also not terribly surprising if you listen to their music.
Well,
like the guy, like, and I don't mean that in a who cares way. I just
no,
mean
but
that
you can tell.
It seems kind of obvious in hindsight.
You can tell there's a troubled man writing these lyrics. So yeah. I think I've written in my notes here in particular that the lyrics are not particularly clever, but they're very sincere. It's almost the James Hetfield school of lyricism. It's not particularly smart, but he's quite sincere in what he's saying. So, but yeah, so you will get that throughout every song on this record in particular. There's a negativity to a lot of the lyricism. A lot of sort of angsty sort of breakup tunes almost. It sounds like he's shouting at exes and things.
I think that definitely. Like I'd said to Jess earlier that if you could sum up Hybrid Theory in one word, it would be skin. Sum up this in one word, it'd be because there's a lot of me and you kind of contrast.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely got those in my notes. So don't worry, we'll get to me's and you's when we get to the songs. But yeah, so that was, I suppose, a sort of breakdown of the structure of a Linkin Park song, and that is very much
right. That's it. That's the album covered. So
yeah, well,
good to speak to you.
Well, there. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get much variety on this record. Let's put it that way. But at the same time, I do feel like Linkin Park have tapped into their style, and they very much refined, what it is what a Linkin Park song is, and you basically get a very strong chorus on every song on this album. Well, outside of Forward, I guess, and maybe what's the Session, isn't it? The Mr. Joe Hahn scratch song.
Yeah. I think just to be clear, I was being facetious. And if you have an album where every single song sounds different, that's a mixtape.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
That's not a coherent work. That's a greatest hits album of a different grip, and that's okay. And I think that's why this is a good one to cover instead of Hybrid Theory, because if they've nailed the sound, and at times they push it a little beyond what you can do with new metal, but at the same time it does sound like they're hitting a wall. They've found their groove, and that's why it's fun to listen to.
Yep. So then, let's move on to Somewhere I Belong, which is one of this album's singles. I think it was the first, actually.
I wanna heal, I wanna feel what I thought was never real. I wanna let go of the pain I felt so long. Erase all the pain till it's gone. I wanna heal, I wanna feel like I'm close to something real. I wanna find something I wanted all along. Somewhere I belong.
I would say that this song is particularly a sort of extension of Crawling off the first album. It's very much in line with that, in that it's a sort of a mid-paced, sort of crunchy but catchy song. That's sort of elevated by its chorus, but it's got that sort of, again, it's that sort of negative vibe to it. That's very much in line with Crawling. But yeah, I think it's one of the ones that most people remember from this record, because of obviously its single status. But yeah, it's a memorable little song.
It opens with the classic Mike Shinoda rap, which is say world today, in my brain, in my mind, all the time. This is my rap, holding nothing back. There you go. That's it. But he's got a very particular delivery. Like, not to say it's bad. It's just like it's always got that sort of
Yeah.
got that guy. He likes to rhyme words with "say" a lot, doesn't he?
I had nothing to say, and I'd get lost in the nothingness inside of me. I was confused, and I let it all out and find that I'm not the only person with these things in mind.
God. But yes, it's very much that sort of trade-off between the two, isn't it? You do find that Chester sort of, especially in the later music, he leads vocals basically on his own for an awful lot of the time, whereas on the first two records you do sort of see that trade-off between him and Shinoda, which is very much sort of indicative of that time of their career, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I haven't really got much to say about this, to be honest with you. It's one of those songs that's so drilled into my head, you know, that like you can play like about 5 seconds of it, and it's like, right, that's somewhere I belong, and then off you go and you start singing along. It's it's a rock club banger almost, you know. It's such a staple of the rock club.
It's got a good breakdown in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
The bit it goes, we'll never know.
Yeah, that's
good.
Nice. Yeah, nice little bridge, that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you know, it's hard to look at these tracks because we have heard them so many times.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, that's what's interesting about going back to these classic albums and breaking them down and thinking, oh, you know, are these really good? Are these really classics? But I think, yeah, it's a good track.
Yeah,
it's just it almost. I don't want to say formulaic, but you know what I mean. I don't think it's the most interesting track.
No. It's very much that sort of Linkin Park style by numbers, isn't it? Which is no bad thing because, you know, that's their style, I guess. Like they claim ownership to it, so why the hell not? But yeah, I do feel like there's moments on this record which you know, just shine a little bit brighter than Somewhere I Belong. It's very much your safe sort of album single, I think. So speaking of said moments that shine a little bit better, the next track is Lying From You, which I feel is the album's secret banger.
I'd rather be all alone. No turning back now. Anywhere on my own, 'cause I can say no turning back now. The very worst part of you is me.
It's got I love the riff at the start. That oh god, so good. And then the best breakdown of the record, as far as I'm concerned, with the very worst part of you is me. Love that, so good. Oh, what a track! I love this song. It's such a good one.
I think it's good. Definitely one of the catchier choruses on the album.
Yeah. No, really cool stuff. I just want to sing like with this one. This album in particular, it reminds you of so many good like melodies. This is the thing we've got to talk about with Chester in particular, is that he is a really, really strong vocalist. I think he gets better as his career goes on, but at this point, he's still. There's some really good melodies. He's got that, like I say, he's got those sort of like those grungy sort of heat-led vocals a lot of the time, which is, you know, that half song, half scream sort of thing. But his non-heat
vocals are very good too.
Yeah, absolutely. There are songs on this album in particular where he just is clean singing, and it's really nice. It's just a really strong melody. Just really gets to flex his pipes as a vocalist. And in
this song he goes from the kind of clean non-heat vocals.
Yeah.
Straight into it in the chorus,
yeah,
and then just before the breakdown, he goes into downright screaming.
Yeah,
that's a very, very impressive vocal range, and really polished and good.
Absolutely, and this, you know, he maintained that throughout his entire career. So, like, he's obviously, you know, keeping his voice in check. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I think "Lying From You" is a really fantastic song. One of an album track that probably doesn't get its due because it obviously didn't come out as a single. But yeah, really cool little track, that one. We then lead into Hit the Floor, which I think is probably one of the more metal-y songs on the album.
1 minute you're on top, the next you're not, watch it drop, making your heart stop, just before you hit the floor. 1 minute you're on top, the next you're not, missed your shot, making your heart stop. You think you won, and then it's all gone.
The guitar work in particular.
All bands at this, all bands are contractually obliged to have a song called "Hit the Floor" at some point in their careers.
Oh my god!
Bullet.
Yeah. God, I didn't even think about that. God, yeah. What a bizarre thing. Yeah, we've covered that and all. So
this one's it's.
Go on.
I think I don't know.
You've got thoughts, or maybe you don't.
I do. My thoughts are this is.
So I think
fairly generic trap with these like Mike Shinoda rapping man. He's
Yeah.
gonna rap like it's a little bit down.
So
And then just all
the
that stuff.
verses
But
are
I
very
think the,
sort of
the
hip-hoppy,
chorus is
yeah.
interesting.
yeah.
The chorus is interesting. It's I don't know. Yeah, it's more of a chant led thing compared to the usual like Chester Bennington Heat chorus, and I think that's interesting. I just don't know if I'd like it that much.
Oh, okay. I'm quite a big fan of Hit the Floor, to be honest with you. I like it's that trade-off between Mike and Chester. So in the verses, you get that sort of hip-hoppy, rap-led sort of thing. And then it sort of opens up for the choruses where Chester takes over and becomes more of a rock song. So, yeah, but like I say, I think the guitar work on this one in particular is a little bit more metallic than some of the things that preceded it. But yes, it's probably one of those ones that I don't think people often come back to too much. It's very much that's another Linkin Park song. You know, it's that style is on it, isn't it?
But that's part of it, is that this album isn't really about pushing the boundaries of that sound.
No, it's
and,
like I say.
and I guess that's where it falls down. Is it's not like, well, now we've done Hybrid Theory, what can we do? It's like, we have done Hybrid Theory.
Yeah,
do Hybrid Theory again.
Well, that's it. Isn't
And
it?
that's where you get songs like this. It's like, yep, that was a song.
Yeah.
Was it a bad song? No. Was it an amazing song? No.
Yeah. No, that's definitely the takeaway thought from that one. I'm afraid. So it's interesting actually, because the first 4 tracks of this album have been pretty much rockers. You know, they've been very sort of in your face, straightforward. Easier to Run, I think, is the first time where you can actually catch a breath.
Something has been taken from deep inside of me. A secret I've kept locked away, no one can ever see. Wounds so deep they never show, they never go away. Like moving pictures in my head, for years and years they've played.
If I could change, I would. Take the pain, I would. Retrace every wrong move that I made, I would. If I could stand up and take the blame, I would. If I could take all the shame to the grave, I would.
It's more of a slower track. It's quite similar to the album closer, Numb. It's very much led by a very catchy, memorable chorus, which is in the song title as well. So yeah, it instantly comes to mind.
It's easier to run, replacing this pain with something more. It's so much easier to go than face all this pain. You're all alone.
So yeah, I feel like this one, melody ever so slightly stronger. I can recall it just by looking at the album, the song title. You know, it's a very, it's like I say, it's one of those very catchy chorus melodies that this album seems to deal with so well. You know, it's very much that encapsulated very well.
So you've got some much softer Chester vocals during the verses.
Yes, you do. Yeah, so
And I think, and they're not afraid to do something a bit quieter and electronic that will come to in other songs like Breaking the Habit. But
yeah.
I like that this to me is one of the signs that maybe there could have been a bit more depth to their sound over time.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
gives you an idea of one potential direction in which it could have evolved.
Yeah,
They ended up not going that way, and that's probably something for the post-album discussion.
Yeah.
But this is one of the songs I like in the album because it makes me think, how could this song develop and be a bit more than just a genre that people laugh at?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Because again, it's got like, if you got these lyrics tattooed on your arm, right? Everybody would laugh at you, but there's still a sincerity to them, and these guys deliver them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that is very much, Chester's forte, is that all right. His lyricism isn't particularly smart or clever, but he's just very sincere. He's got something he wants to say, and he's delivering it in the best of his ability. And it does feel very hot on sleeve. He believes in what he's saying, essentially. So, right, we should move on to track number 7. So this is Faint, and I think it's safe to say this is probably one of the all-time best nu metal songs.
face away and pretend that I'm not, but I'll be here cause you're all that I got.
I can't feel the way I did before. Don't turn your back on me. I won't be ignored.
a real staple of the rock club, an absolute classic, I think, in my mind. It's so memorable. It's one of the songs that you think of when you think of Linkin Park, as far as I'm concerned.
I think this song's probably going to be on the playlist at my wedding.
Yeah, God, it's such. It's so synonymous with heavy music in general, not just Linkin Park. I think like it's a new metal classic as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we had a lot of fun when this one came on the car earlier. And I think if you were going to introduce somebody to Linkin Park, you would definitely put on Faint first, or at least in the top 2 tracks that you would play. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I've got a story about Faint actually. About so the one and only time I've ever seen Linkin Park live was when they headlined Download in 2007, and I was, happy to finally see them. At that point they just released Minutes to Midnight, I think. So it was just on the cusp of them changing their style and things, but it was still very much a concert led by their material from the first 2 records. So I was very happy to finally see that stuff live. I left during the encore, and I don't know why. It was one of those things. I'm like, why did you do that, you fucking idiot? So yeah, I decided, that's the end of the gig, so off we go. And yeah,
is this your first gig? Were you unfamiliar with the concept?
No, it wasn't. I don't know why.
Jay-Z even rapped with Linkin Park, explaining the concept of an encore.
God, I don't know. I must have been tired or just a bit like out of it, because as I was, halfway back to my tent, I heard Faint start, and I was like, are you fucking joking? Why have I walked away from Linkin Park and I've missed them play Faint? So there we go. Don't walk away during encores, kids.
Because that's actually going back to Australia. One of the things that annoys me here is that gigs don't end at 11.
Oh, really?
Run until 12.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
And because we live quite far out, we generally do have to live midway through the performance.
Yeah.
That's happened a couple of times now. So, since Bellacore commented on the post on Facebook, if you're listening to this, please finish your gig at 11 o'clock, because some of us live out in the Blue Mountains and it takes us a long time to get home.
But yes, so outside of my terrible story about walking away from Faint live, I just want to say that Faint is a fucking fantastic song, one of the best on this record, an amazing new metal track, and another fantastic breakdown. I love the whole.
Oh, it's very
out now.
It's so got a really good riff over it as well.
Oh, yeah, really. No, just an all around great Linkin Park track, and one of the defining songs of the new metal era, I think. What else can I say about it? If that's not praise enough, I don't know what is.
So one other thing I would say about it is it's really short. This song is only 2 minutes and 42 seconds long, and this entire album is like under 40 minutes.
It's 36 minutes and 43 seconds long. Yeah.
And I looked through most of Linkin Park's albums, and they're all pretty short.
Yeah. I like that about them. Like they get to the point. Like I feel like that's kind of their deal. Like there isn't too much flowery sort of like pissing around an awful lot of the time with Linkin Park music. It's like, right, song starting now, here's the riff, right, into the verse, into the chorus. Like everything.
You think about how long a typical, so like a lot of punk rock songs come in at about 2.5, 3.5 minutes. Most metal songs tend to be around 4 or more, because you've got that, verse, chorus, chorus. It's a solo, chorus, again, the end.
Yeah,
possibly one of those really awkward extended finishing things.
Yeah.
But these guys just get in and out, 2.5 minutes, done. And I think that is what gives this album so much energy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's a very good observation, that one. I mean, I want to say that there is some sort of a punk influence on them. Like maybe not so obvious in the actual like songs itself, but maybe definitely in just the way they deliver their ideas. They just like you say, in and out.
The brevity and not wasting your time, getting in, get to the point, leave. And that's good. But I couldn't believe the Fate was 2.5 minutes long.
It's weird, isn't it?
it certainly leaves a much bigger impact.
Well, there you go. Again, high praise for for Faint of Linkin Park's 2003 album Meteora. God,
Hey, it's just a very good track.
it is.
And,
It is.
if you're listening to this album on a treadmill, you'll definitely put your speed up at least 1 kilometer an hour, because that's what I did. There was like my feet weren't moving fast enough to keep up with it.
Yeah.
So no,
the pace does really step up for Faint as well. Actually, I feel like most of the rocking tracks we've had prior to this, I've been just sort of sitting around that mid pace, maybe not, maybe a little bit quicker than something like Easy to Run, but still not sort of touching this tempo.
Just everything about it's full of adrenaline, from the opening little weird violin lip thing, and then that I don't know how you describe it. It sounds like it's not quite a drum roll, but it's like a really it's like this beat in the background. It's quite fast. It sounds more rappy than punk rocking.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Kind of beat to it. Yeah. But it's I think that just makes it interesting and good.
No, absolutely.
Fun song.
Great track. We then move on to figure number 9, or figure .09.
As I called it earlier today, Linkin Park track number 9.
Even though it's track 8.
So I don't make the rules.
And now you become a part of me. You'll always be right here. You become a part of me. You'll always be my fear. I can't separate myself from what I've done. Giving up a part of me. I've let myself become you.
So this one reminds me quite a lot of By Myself from the first album, in that there's something sort of like metallic being struck throughout the entire track. There's that sort of like ding, like someone's hitting like a bar against like a metallic bin or something like that. I don't know.
The actual riff sounds very similar to One Step Closer.
Yeah. So it's this one is very much vibing on the style from Hybrid Theory. I always think this one's quite forgettable when it starts, but then when the chorus kicks in, I'm like, oh, this is actually another great song. That chorus is really fantastic. That whole and now you've become a part of me is just really
I've let myself become you.
Yeah, God, again sticks with you so like heavily. Once you get back into it, it's like, this is a great song. I forgot about this. And
I was trying to think about this earlier, and like it's one of the core themes of this, apart from like depression and feeling bleak, is a lot of it does seem to be about identity.
Yeah, a bit of a duality thing going on. Yeah.
So what's the problem with somebody becoming a part of you?
I don't know.
It's an interesting, because there's that one, and then there's like Don't Stay as well, and Lying From You.
Yeah,
a lot of these tracks are about interpersonal relationships and stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just about relationships breaking down, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this song in particular as well, like the breakdown is that whole "get away from me" thing, and it's like, there's obviously some sort of, I don't know, there's been a it is very much a sort of pushing someone away from you sort of vibe that he's going for. I don't know why welcoming someone into your life to then not want to be sort of intimate sound, because that's what it sounds like. It's like he's rejecting intimacy almost, which is a bizarre topic for a song about what might be a breakup. But yeah, it's another one of those tracks where I feel it's like a bit of a hidden gem on the album. Like I say, when it starts, I think it's I'll skip this one, but once it sort of gets into the chorus and I remember the melodies and things, it's actually one of my favourites on the album.
It's good. It's a really good chorus. Mm-hmm. It makes up for a fairly humble beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking about one of my favourites on the album, the next track is Breaking the Habit, which I feel like is the only time really where the song structure sort of changes quite dramatically.
Memories consume, like opening the wounds. I'm picking me apart again.
So it's a more delicate track, but at the same time, the drums in particular are doing something quite interesting in that they're basically playing a breakbeat. So it's very sort of, it sounds quite hip hoppy, but it's got a pace to it that's quite driving. The whole song is very sort of like pushing you forward the entire time, despite the fact that instrumentation is a little bit more stripped back. We basically get the vocals are basically given their chance to shine. I feel like this is one of the best vocal performances from Chester on the album in particular. Just a really memorable vocal melody on this one. One of my favourites, and a really interesting choice for a single, because I feel like it's a little bit against the grain in the Linkin Park style. It's definitely showing a little bit more feathers to their bow, almost strings to their bow. Sorry,
feathers to their bow.
Feathers to their bow. God, here's me getting the the terms of endearment wrong. But yeah, a really good song. And if I remember correctly as well, one of my favourite music videos as well. So it's actually an animated video done by Production IG, a Japanese animation studio who are probably most famous for things like Ghost in the Shell and Blood the Last Vampire.
That was very Lewisy. I think so. A couple of things I think about this one. It is probably the closest this album gets to escaping the new metal trappings.
Yeah.
And I think it's not only one of the best tracks on the album. I think it's also definitely the most interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It is pretty much the only lick on the album that isn't just power chords.
Yep.
It's got a really interesting subdued guitar riff.
Yep.
Also, the vocals are pretty heat free.
A lot more clean.
A bit more vulnerable and tender.
Yep.
I think it's a really, really cool track.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a real, again, another one I'd say is probably quite a classic of the rock club. I
may be an emo new metal kid, but I'm sensitive too.
Absolutely, But yeah, no, another great single off this record, and one that I remember fondly. Next up, we have From the Inside, which again is I think another secret banger. You get caught.
You're not declaring back half bangers.
Oh, I am indeed.
Take everything from the inside and throw it all away, 'cause I swear for the last time I won't trust myself with you.
I think there's quite a subdued verse in this one, but a nice vocal melody again, very clean. But it's the chorus, man, is just enormous. Oh God, the whole
a bit more anthemic.
Yeah.
I guess although because the choruses are like something like Faint is quite, because it's so fast paced, it doesn't have the same build up.
Yeah.
It's just like full throttle the whole time.
That's
it's
it.
a bit different.
Yeah.
So you've got that swoop kind of crescendo of emotion and stuff into the chorus. It makes it feel a bit bigger and expansive.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And then there's another fantastic breakdown. I think they're really good at like just getting Chester to scream something and then right, here we go, here's a big riff now for you. Enjoy having a bit of a mosh.
I won't waste myself on you. Waste myself on you.
This one's the I won't waste myself on you. There we go. See, like there's another you and me.
We should do a word cloud for all the words there. Like, just be a massive you and a massive me, and probably really small skin.
That can be the album art for this episode. Yeah. Just the word cloud.
I mean, it's not a particularly imaginative track.
No, not at all. But again, it's very much playing to their strengths. They understand what people want from a Linkin Park song, and I feel like this delivers it. But like you say, it's got a bit more of a interesting lead up to the chorus in that there's a sort of, it's a little bit more delicate, subdued in the verses, and then things sort of kick off and give it a bit more impact.
It's a bit more stadium rock than Mosh Pit.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, we get probably the most purely hip hop song on the album, which is Nobody's Listening.
Yo, peep the style and the kids checking for it. The number one question is how could you ignore it? We drop right back in the cut over basement tracks with raps that got you backing us up like rewind that. We're just rolling with the rhythm, rise from the ashes of stylistic division. With these non-stop lyrics of life living, not to be forgotten but still unforgiven.
I think pretty much Mike Shinoda is in control of most of the lead vocals on this one, apart from the chorus where Chester it doesn't really say too much actually. It's a very simplistic chorus, and the title of the song is In the Said Chorus. But yeah, it's very much that sort of hip hop beat throughout the entire time. This sort of almost Wu-Tang Clan-esque like sort of strings to the melody.
The beat to me is very Tribe Called Quest.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Who would I'm pretty sure they list them as one of their influences, or at least Chester does. I can't remember when I skimmed Wikipedia earlier. I saw Tribe Called Quest and I wasn't surprised because I made those were my part of my gym notes.
Yeah.
Apart from that, not a massively interesting track.
No, not particularly. It's very much like here's the throwaway sort of more electronic-y song, I guess. But yeah,
the lyric, like the actual rap lyrics are pretty dreadful.
Yeah.
Here's a sample for you. Yo, peep the style and the kids checking for it. Number one question is how could you ignore it? We drop right back in the cut over basement tracks with raps that got you jacking this up. What does that even mean?
Well, there you go.
Well, Linkin Park would argue they're just rolling with the rhythm, rise from the ashes of stylistic division with these non-stop lyrics of life living.
Jesus. Yeah, Mike's lyricism is definitely not the strongest on this track, unfortunately. But
it's just random shite rhyming with other random shite.
It's a lot of like posing, isn't it? It's basically sort of that, you know, I'm a better rapper than you type of deal, which is obviously not the case. It's
not. I mean, it's not terrible.
No.
I think he's got an interesting flow. That'll be a charitable thing to say, but he's got an interesting flow. He doesn't really have much interesting to say.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Snoop Dogg in a sense. You know, Snoop Dogg has amazing vocal delivery of terrible things.
I mean, I'm sure Mike would be very happy to be compared to Snoop Dogg, who is probably regarded as one of the all-time best rappers. But there we go.
Oh yeah, well, no, okay. I'm not comparing Mike Shinoda to Snoop Dogg. I'm just saying, he's got a much more interesting delivery. And he has insightful things to say.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point to put it. We then get basically an interlude track in the form of Session, which is basically Johan, Mr. Scratch DJ, having a show-off moment. Bit of sort of an electronic sort of mix, I suppose. It's very much a case. It mirrors again Hybrid Theory in that it's almost in the same position as the previous album as Cure for the Itch, which is another song that's basically just Johan having a good old time on the decks. Mr.
Is Cure for the Itch a pun because he's just scratching?
I think it more than likely is. Yes. Again, not particularly smart lyricism from anybody in Linkin Park.
No. In fact, you wouldn't be surprised if it had scratch and brackets, would you?
Well, yeah, God, can you imagine?
Yes, I can.
We get the album closer. So, Numb is the final song on the album, which is a bizarre thing to think that Numb is the final song on the album, because it is probably one of the most memorable singles off the record.
Every step that I take is another mistake to you.
Caught in the undertow, just caught in the undertow.
I've become so numb, I can't feel you there. Become so tired, so much more aware. I'm becoming this. All I want to do is be more like me and be less like you.
It is very much in line with something like In the End, I think. It's a little bit more subdued, a little bit more focus on vocal melodies. Hugely memorable vocals from Chester on this one. I think you can literally tells, ask someone, "Oh, have you heard Numb by Linkin Park?" and they can instantly have the chorus stuck in their head.
This must have been a single, right?
Yeah, it is a single. Yes, it is. Which is, like I say, it's weird that it's the last song on the album and it was released as a single. It's not something that you often see. The last song on any album is usually winding down time. So. And I do feel like this one does ever so slightly wind down. It's more of a mid-paced track, but at the same time, it's still quite a rocker. There's the guitars are definitely still that sort of power chord bass to them. But yeah, it's another staple of Linkin Park's back catalogue. I think it's one of the songs that they're most known for.
Guess how many views the video for Numb has on YouTube? You're not allowed to look.
I don't
Just
know,
guess.
10 million?
690 million.
Fucking hell. Whoa. Yeah, this is big time Linkin Park song. Yeah, it's definitely one of the most defining tracks in their back catalogue. Absolutely.
I think yeah, I don't have much more to add on that. Like, it's a good radio friendly big song, nice lyrics.
Yeah.
Good. All very nice. Very nice.
A nice conclusion.
So one thing
maybe
thing we should talk about is after I'd listened to Numb in the car today, I listened to the Collision Course Numb Encore mashup. How do we feel about Collision Course, which was a remix album collaboration between Linkin Park and Jay-Z?
It's one of the few Linkin Park albums I don't own, which should give you enough indication of how I feel about that record. Doesn't do much for me at all.
I think it's not as good as the best Jay-Z mashup album is Chrono Jigga, which is mashed up with the Chrono Trigger soundtrack, which if you haven't heard, is really amazing stuff.
Oh my god, I can listen to that after this. That sounds amazing.
It's very, very fun. But I think it's interesting because I wouldn't say that Hybrid Theory was a massive mainstream push, but Meteora probably is. It's a bit more pop friendly, and I think that's why you can get a Jay-Z mashup into it. And one of the things, so to summarize, I think we both quite like this album.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's a lot of fun.
It is.
I think it's probably an all-time new metal classic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know if it would ever be in my favorite albums of all time, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It does. It comes what it needs to do, and it just gets it done with. And like I say, all the songs are encapsulated very succinctly. They have a clear message that they want to sort of deliver with each song. They get it done. It's just fun. The whole time. Every song on this record, the structure is, like you say, quite similar, but it's big choruses is very much the focus of this album, and there's so many melodies and riffs, and just it's so memorable. Like you can't. It's difficult to listen to this record and not come away and think like you've got certain songs stuck in your head. It's just they'll always stick with me. It's such a well made record. Yeah, absolutely.
It's good car metal.
Absolutely.
Can you play Dream Theater in the car? No, you can't. Can you play this in the car? Yeah, you can.
Yeah,
you can.
Everybody gets a chance to sing along when you listen to Meteora. So it's just it is such a classic of the new metal era as far as I'm concerned. I think it's a really, really strong album from Linkin Park, and like I say, it really does mark the end of their metal roots, I guess. Because from this,
so let's talk. So maybe we should. So let's guess each other's favorite tracks. Then we can talk a bit about the what happened to Linkin Park afterwards, which we keep quick. And then we can talk about some further listening, which is I think you're probably going to be disgusted by my choices, but that's okay. So,
all right, go on then.
So what's your favorite track? I mean, I'm tempted to just say that Faint is probably your favorite, but I don't know if it is.
Yeah, it's got to be, hasn't it? And I feel like that's yours as well.
Oh yeah, of course it is.
Yeah.
It's the best track. That's the right answer.
I wanted to say Line From You. I think it's a fucking fantastic song, and I always want to kind of pick album tracks over singles and stuff. But Faint is just a classic. It's such a modern classic as far as the modern metal goes. I challenge anybody who likes heavy music to not like Faint. I think it's a fantastic song. It's so memorable.
I don't know. There's a lot of snobs out there who would probably would say they didn't like it for the sake of being contentious, but it's
fuck off.
It's very fun. If you don't like it, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great pop metal song.
The best non-single track probably is "Lying From You."
Yeah,
because I think the other really good track, like for me, would be "Breaking the Habit," which is also a single.
Yeah, "Breaking the Habit's" fantastic as well, and I like I said, I really like "Figure 9" as well. I think it's a really great track as well. But I could do this all day. There's every time I go back to certain songs, it's like, oh, that was a really strong chorus, or that was a really good melody. I like the riff in that. I like the breakdown in this one. There's so much of that on this album.
So what do you think's the best track of Hybrid Theory?
Best track of Hybrid Theory is either I've a Place for My Head, or By Myself. I think is my favourites.
Because I am partial to Paper Cut. I think that's just a really fun opener.
Yeah,
it's one of the best opening tracks ever.
It's a great track, but I just feel like melodies and choruses. I just feel like for me personally, I think A Place for My Head and By Myself really sort of have stuck with me a lot more. I think Paper Cut's a little bit wishy-washy. And as much as One Step Closer is regarded a classic of the new metal era, I've actually always found it quite annoying. I don't know what it is about that song. It's just I don't know. Maybe it's overexposure to that one.
It's a wee bit too emo on the nose. The "shut up when I'm talking to you" breakdown. I just think it's a bit too obvious.
Yeah, there's crawling for that as well. God, that's definitely one of the most sort of atypical "I hate my parents" songs. But yeah, there you
go. So moving on to the legacy of Linkin Park. Now, in preparation for this, I kind of went through some of the other albums, and we put on "A Thousand Suns." And listen, I didn't have time to listen to every single album, so I put on the track "The Catalyst."
Yeah.
And after about 30 seconds of this, I turned round to Jess, and we just kind of gave each other this look. I don't know if it was like despair or confusion, but we just wondered what the hell we were listening to.
Right.
And I think with most of their albums, apart from perhaps The Hunting Party, everything after Meteora, I'm like, what the hell is this?
Right. Okay.
How can this be the same band? This seems like a different universe.
Yeah. No, they do get quite impulsive on every album, sort of post Meteora, in that they obviously decide, okay, let's change our style to this, and then that becomes the theme for that record. Is they've now got a new sound for that one particular record. I think A Thousand Suns is a weird anomaly in that you can't really just listen to singles off it. It is a concept record, and I do feel like you do actually need to hit it as an album more than certain songs, because it works as one cohesive piece more than it does in specific songs, which is obviously at odds to the normal Linkin Park structure, which is very much a singles band. A Thousand Suns is not like that at all. You do need to listen to that album front to back to really sort of appreciate what they're doing with it. It, like I say, it's a concept record that is very much a mainstay of that type of music. But yeah, it's a weird one. Let's put it that way. There's lots of
they're all just so surreal if you slice into them, because I've got Apple Music, and so it highlights the top tracks with a little star.
Yeah.
So for example, Living Things. So the iTunes editor's notes: Linkin Park returns to its roots in Living Things. Now, first of all, perhaps it should be returns to their roots. But it's like expansive guitar and rap and stuff. But then I listen to the tracks, like, what is it?
It's more of an electronic rock album, that one. It's quite
like,
heavy.
How is this?
Yeah.
How is this returning to their roots?
Yeah. I mean, I think in the actual song structure, I think that album in particular does do a little bit more of a service to their earlier stuff, in that there are obvious songs there. There are singles, It's a very much a verse chorus. It's pop song structure, lots of memorable melodies in that one. But the actual style of the music in particular is more electronic led. And even when there are guitars there, they've been sort of like churned through some sort of machine that makes them weird and electronic-y sounding. It's a weird record.
You mean like an amp?
Well, it's not just a straightforward. There's an effect to it. There's something going on there.
A whole board of them. No, I know what you mean. Because whenever we talked about what Linkin Park album we're going to do, you suggested The Hunting Party, and I'm paraphrasing, but you said something like Oh well, they said that this was the album they always wanted to do. You know, this is what they always intended Hybrid Theory to be. And I was almost annoyed. I was like, that's bollocks.
No,
the album
so
they intended to make was Hybrid Theory. They're just trying to sell their new one, and get the old fans like, come back, guys, come back. I know the past 3 albums after this have been bizarre, but we're back again.
The Hunting Party. I remember reading an interview in particular that said that they wanted the Hunting Party to be what they'd make Hybrid Theory in the current, you know, how they'd make Hybrid Theory now, essentially. So it's like, right, this is a modern Linkin Park album, but this is, you know, our attempt at making a heavy guitar album as adults, essentially, instead of being kids. And yeah, I get that to a degree. It's not a metal album, I say. I think there's more of a punk influence on that album in particular, in the song structure and the guitar work. And it's actually
some interesting tracks on it, like Guilty All the Same is pretty interesting. And like that they got Rakim in, who's like actually a good rapper, rather than just Shinoda.
It was again that song never really clicked with me when I first listened to it, but when it, in the context of the album, I like it a lot more. I just it's a little bit more interesting, like song structure wise. They're not as atypical. Here's your chorus, here's your verse. You know, there's some really bizarre stuff going on. I really like War off the album. That is just a straight up hardcore punk song. I think Rebellion is a fantastic song. You can really hear Darren Malakian's influence on that one quite a lot. It is very much a weird sort of semi System of a Down song. Really cool little track, that one. There's some big singles on it as well. Final Masquerades, a really memorable single. I think, even though it's not a single, Keys to the Kingdom is another one that's just a really good opener, actually. I think it's a really strong melody on that one.
I think maybe one of the problems with Linkin Park is that after 2 albums, we're like, oh shit, you know, we better start saying something a bit more profound.
Yeah.
Like, I remember seeing the video for What I've Done, which I thought was hilarious, because like, there's the atom bombs going off.
Yeah.
Space shuttle disasters, and then also Linkin Park in the desert. And one of those things is considerably less epic and important than the others.
Yeah, no.
But I think because they don't have the lyrical insight.
Well, yeah.
it comes across as like ham microphoned.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think that album in particular does feel a little bit pretentious as well.
Minutes to Midnight.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's more like an indie rock record. There's a couple of moments where it gets heavy. Given Up's a really just a stompy, heavy, like metally song, and No More Sorrow is another one that's very sort of in that vein as well. But yeah, a lot of that album I think is probably some of their most forgettable work.
And what about One More Light?
So their last album, then, eh? Well, that'll be par for the course, I guess. I don't know whether they're going to continue or not. As of recording, last night was the Chester Bennington tribute show that they did at the Hollywood Bowl, featuring lots of guest vocalists and things. So they're obviously not adverse to still playing live, but I don't know whether they're going to actually continue making more music. But One More Light basically is a strange send-off. It's very much that atypical... Their songwriting is very much of them. They've definitely got a pop song structure to their entire back catalogue. That definitely permeates their entire career. They do like writing pop music. And with One More Light, that is very much clean cut. You know, this is a pop album. The instrumentation is a lot more subdued. There is a lot more actual sort of, it's typical electronic like pop music production to it. It features people like Kira and Stormzy and stuff. You know, it's very much a push for a mainstream audience. I don't know if it's selling out as much because they've always been a big selling band. I don't know if that really I could really regard it as sold out. But
I'm always reluctant to use the phrase selling out unless it's Green Day, who you're definitely sellouts. But or just crap. Like they decided to stop being stoners and start being serious. It's all farcical. But okay, so the problem I have with Linkin Park doing pop music is that everybody does pop music. That's what makes it pop music. And if I wanted to hear Stormzy, I would listen to some Stormzy.
Yeah.
Which I have done. It's not really my cup of tea. If you like that, fair play to you. But we need Linkin Park to do rock music because they're a rock band. Because if everybody does crappy electro pop, then that's all we've got. We're in a situation in mainstream music right now where absolutely everything in the radio is this kind of weird EDM pop light stuff or just hip hop.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think,
and even traditional R&B doesn't really exist in the same way anymore. It is all just very similar style of rap. We watched this video the other day on Vox about this triplet rapping.
Right. Okay.
Just like do and
right. Okay.
There's a clip of Snoop Dogg like basically laughing at these guys who all have the exact same flow.
Right.
And
I see. Yeah.
music is becoming more homogenous over time. Pop music is becoming more homogenous over time. We need bands like Linkin Park to come and shake things up,
right,
and to get people into metal, and that's why it's been like, oh, you know, where's the next generation's Hybrid Theory or Meteora?
Yeah, no, that's fair. But then again, like, Linkin Park are no longer that band anymore. You know, like,
yeah, I'm not saying I'm not saying it has to be them. I just Perhaps I wish they were.
Yeah, no, that's a perfectly reasonable conclusion. I think One More Light in particular is obviously a little bit more profound now, because lyrically you can definitely hear a lot of Chester's sort of suffering and just his own sort of battles with his mind, I guess, quite heavily on his lyricism. I think it's an outstanding vocal performance from him on this album, actually. Like, regardless of the fact that the music isn't particularly what you would regard Linkin Park, I think he does put an outstanding vocal performance in. It does definitely sounds like he believes in what he's singing, and he always has, to be honest. I think that's one of his strengths, is that regardless of what's going on musically, Chester Bennington is a pretty decent constant. I mean, you know, I'm
definitely not saying they're sellouts, because I think
no, absolutely, no.
They have to record the kind of I think it's sincere music that they want to record. Yeah, that's the difference between them and Green Day.
Yeah,
I think Green Day are doing it to make lots and lots of money.
Yeah. No, it is definitely Linkin Park's MO. Is like, right, look, what music do we want to stand behind for this album tour, because we've got to play it every night, you know, and I respect that in a weird way. Like, it's all right. Yes, it definitely sort of works against where they've come from, but at the same time, at least they believe in what they're doing. You know, like that's as anybody who makes music or does anything creatively, you've got to believe in what you're doing. Otherwise, what's the point? And they've so far managed to make that work for, is it 7 albums now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So whether we'll see more from them, I don't know. I can't imagine a world where Chester Bennington is not the lead vocalist of Linkin Park. But
yeah, I think they should go do another band.
Yeah, I think I'd much prefer it if they did the Lost Prophets route of, like, all the members just went and did something else with a different vocalist and called it a different name. So yeah,
that was slightly different circumstances.
Well, yeah, understandable. Yeah. I mean, it's not a real comparison, that one, but yeah, at least
there's a bit of difference between your vocalist's dead and your vocalist's a paedophile.
Well,
So there's a pretty big gap there.
But at least, you know, there's a comparison, at least in the way that they evolved into a different band beyond that. So I think I think you're right. That should be the next step. Is if these guys do want to continue a career in music, I feel like they should be a different band with a different vocalist instead of just Linkin Park 2.0, you know. So
clearly at about Linkin Park 6.0 by this stage, because they've changed so much anyway.
Well, that's it, isn't it? You know, like,
you know,
and stay. You know,
if they continued, it's arguably, you know, it's still going to be different.
Yeah.
Again, so
and they're the same lineup, you know, for pretty much their entire career. I mean, the only real exception is that Dave Farrell, their longtime bassist, wasn't on Hybrid Theory. But then, like, from Meteora onwards, it's been the same lineup. You know, it's bizarre. So
yeah, weird.
I mean, fair play to them. They've done what they wanted to do, and they've been very successful at it. So, you know, who am I to judge at the end of the day? So there we go. That was Meteora by Linkin Park. Let's do some recommendations then. Further listening.
Okay. You do yours first.
Okay. So I'm gonna pick 2 songs. I think 2 albums, which I think are very traditionally nu metal, and I feel like if you like nu metal, you'll like these records. Sounds like Alan's gone for a different route, so that should be interesting.
Not quite.
Yeah. So my first one is I would have picked. You know, you would have heard this recommendation before if we hadn't lost the episode. It's Garugumesh's Monster, which I feel is probably a modern nu metal classic. Garugamesh have sadly now split up, but they were, as far as I'm concerned, the last bastion of nu metal. The Monster comes from 2011, I think, and it is just hit after hit after hit. Very much that sort of electronic fusion of metal that you sort of get with Linkin Park, but very much taken to extremes. I'd say Garugamesh are a bit of a heavier band. When the songs sort of step up a bit, they are definitely more of a metal band than they are a rock band, which I think Linkin Park definitely lean more towards the rock side of heavy music than the metal side.
I think what's interesting is that they kind of fuse metal with dubstep in the same way that Linkin Park fuse metal with hip hop.
No, absolutely. So it's very much that sort of line of thinking, but on a modern metal record. But yeah, hugely catchy, really memorable record. Lots of just Garugamesh are totally a singles band, and I would highly recommend that album in particular. The other one is, again, another sort of genre fusion thing, very much in the new metal style, but not hip-hop. So I'm going to choose Roots Rock Riot by Skindred. Skindred can sort of, they fuse rock and metal with basically reggae, essentially. So that's kind of their avenue. So you get that sort of dancehall style Jamaican influence on a lot of their music, but at the same time it's very intense, very sort of heavy and catchy. And I just think Roots Rock Riot is an album of singles. There is not a bad song on that album as far as I'm concerned. I think I'd like to do it for the podcast at some point because it's one of my absolute favourites. And it's unique, nobody else sounds like Skindred in the same way that nobody sounds like Linkin Park. So I've
never really got into them, so we should definitely put that on the big spreadsheet of episodes that we
absolutely
never actually use. But we do if we run out of ideas. There's a good year's worth in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So your recommendations then?
So these recommendations are not tongue-in-cheek, they are deadly serious.
Okay.
So the first one is Disturbed with Asylum.
Okay.
Now, Disturbed get a bad rap, and I think that is because they are meat-headed and a bit silly.
Mm-hmm.
But Asylum is a genuinely good metal album.
Okay.
And I get this is, so it's not their latest album. Their latest is Immortalized, which is a really bad record that has a cover of. It's got a cover of the Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel.
Oh God!
And it's got a song about smoking weed called "Fire It Up," which is like needs to be heard to be believed. How boneheaded can a band be? Asylum is a 2010 album and is very, very good. It's got a couple of excellent tracks like Crucified and Serpentine and Innocence. Really fun bangers. David Draymond's vocals are better than you'd expect, and I just think it's a lot of fun. And it's another one of these gateway albums.
Okay.
So, and Disturbed were one of these bands lumped on the big Wikipedia new metal list.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
They've come a long way from the sickness. Catchy riffs, interesting delivery. I think it's a really fun album, Asylum.
Okay, I'll give that a go, even though Disturbed do absolutely bugger all for me. But there you go.
Well, it's you might not be surprised, but I think it does a lot of interesting stuff.
Okay, cool. Go for it.
So the other album is one that I listened to when I was about 16 years old, and it is Papa Roach with Love Hate Tragedy.
Why Love Hate Tragedy over Infest?
Okay, because everybody's heard Infest.
Okay, all right, yeah, no, that's fair. Like, I get the connection there to Meteora at least. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because where Linkin Park did the same thing and it went totally off in a myriad of weird directions.
Yeah.
Papa Roach did a second album that's a lot less new metal-y and a bit more rock and roll.
Okay.
And I think it's a really fun record. It's got some good tracks on it.
I don't think I've ever listened to it in its entirety. I know the single, which I think was "She Loves Me Not," wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, am I gonna stand up and defend it in a PowerPoint presentation? No. I don't know. I've got a soft spot for it.
No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
I enjoyed it when I was growing up.
I've got a soft spot for Infest, so absolutely, I can get behind that.
I've got a soft spot for Infest as well. But I think Love Hate Tragedy is an interesting record that deserved more publicity than it got, and I think it just came at the new metal saturation point. It's a fun album.
There we go.
Questionable cover of a baby
throwing the horns.
Giving
God,
yeah.
I remember that now. Yeah.
total low effort job.
Deary me.
So that was us.
That was us.
We'll be back again. We'll be back sooner rather than later, hopefully.
Yep.
that I'm set up on my new digs down under.
Good.
So that's been us. If you like the show, leave us a review on iTunes. That apparently helps.
It does.
Apparently, I mean, you have to do it or else you're in trouble. But the main way that we get listeners and the main way we feel gratified by doing this is people reaching out and supporting us. So do tell your friends. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook. Give us a shout. That's always appreciated.
Yep.
You can arguably follow me on Twitter at AGBear.
You can arguably follow me.
Definitely follow. You can definitely follow you at Sonic Gouda.
Yep. And you can follow us on pretty much all the social medias via @Cast Iron Show.
Instagram's a good one. Instagram's a good one because
we've been enjoying Instagram quite a lot, so please do follow us on Instagram.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're on Facebook and Twitter, obviously @Cast Iron Show on both. So please give us your support. Please recommend us some records. We don't really hear much from people, from listeners as to what they'd like to hear us cover. So. I'd like to see more of that if you could. So please do.
I want to hear people's guilty pleasure new metal album.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Out there that unapologetically like Disturbed. apart from their cover of The Sound of Silence, which is absolutely dreadful.
Is it as dreadful as their cover of Land of Confusion or whatever it is by Genesis?
Worse, far worse.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Now I want to hear it. Oh dear. But yes,
I think on that note, we will see you next time.
Indeed. See you later.